Hey guys, today we're going to try a little experiment. We're going to try making a miniature style fancy feast stove. What we're going to be using is one 1 ounce Axe deodorant can, and we're going to be using a Lysol to go bottle. Now the Lysol to go bottle is about 1 inch in diameter. You can see that there. There you go. And then the Axe can is just over 1.25 inches, just barely. We're going to take the Axe can and we're going to mark it at 1.25 inches up. We'll take our tape measure here and mark it right at 1.25 inches. We just need one little mark there. Our Lysol bottle, we're going to mark at 2 inches. We're actually going to give it a little bit of room here because I'm going to have to cut the bottom of the can off. So we're going to cut it at 2 inches and just a tiny smidgen. Just like that. Now that we've got our cans marked like we want, we're going to start with the Axe can. Take the lid off here. And what I do is I'll take my Dremel and I set it right at the height where the mark is. So I'll set it there. Takes just a little bit. Just make sure your blade is right there where your mark is. Tighten it up. There's a million different ways of cutting these, so however you do it, just make sure you cut it there on your line. Okay, now we've got our base cut, and then it's going to be completely square since we're cutting it on the Dremel here. So now we're going to move on to our next can. Since this one is at the 2-inch mark, we're going to have to reset our Dremel here. Okay, now we've got it set right at our 2-inch mark there, so we can cut this can. Okay, so now we've got our second can cut, but now we need to cut off the bottom here. So we're going to reset the height and we're going to cut off the bottom. Okay, so now we have a 2-inch core for our stove. There's the bottom of it, and then this will be the cup for the stove. So together they'll look something like this. We'll move on to our next part. Okay, now before we smooth all of our edges off on both of our pieces, we're going to take and cut some small grooves into what will be the bottom edge of our stove down here in the bottom. Okay, so in the centerpiece, okay, there it is. I don't know if you can see them yet, but there's little bitty grooves right there all along that bottom edge. And so now we're going to clean up the stove edge. And what I use is a small sanding wheel. So get that set up in there. And then we'll just quickly take off the burrs on these. Okay, now that we've got most of this smoothed out, it's still a little bit rough at this point, but we're going to take our buffing tool and we're going to take all the paint off, and which will also smooth out the unfinished edges as well. So let's switch that up and we'll be right back. Okay, so now I've got a small, it's kind of a cloth sanding buffing wheel. I picked up from Lowe's. There's a softer one and a harder one. This is actually the softer one. I prefer that for when I take off the paint. But we're going to use that to take off the final burrs on the edges, and we're going to take off the paint from the first half of this tube and all of this one. Okay, so now we've got both of our cans cut and polished, so there's no paint on them anymore, well, that you can see. For our wick, we're going to use this Bondo fiberglass cloth. I bought this at my local Walmart, and so we're just going to lay this out. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure off what we need for our wick. Our stove is 1.25 inches tall, so we're going to take 1.25 inches times 4, because I'm going to fold it in fourths before I put it inside the stove. So I'm going to take the height of the stove times 4, mark it off, and I'm going to cut a strip. Okay, so I'm going to take my Sharpie. We're going to measure up 5 inches from the bottom of the cloth to the top up here, mark a little mark, all the way to the other side, do the same. Now that we've got our line, we're just going to get a straight edge real quick. We'll mark that up and cut it. So now what I want to do is I'm going to mark a mark halfway up, so that's going to be 2.5 inches. Okay, so we've got our center line marked on here. I don't know if you can see that, it's kind of bright out here, but we've got our center line marked. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold each one of these edges to the center. And I've got some masking tape here we're going to use to hold it in with. So now the wick that we have should be 1.25 inches tall, and hopefully we've got it long enough. Now the reason I do this is because you can see that this fiberglass cloth just comes apart. So we've got all of the frayed edges folded inside except for the ends, and then we will deal with that later as we tuck it in. Okay. So we're going to start off with a piece of tape here on the end of our wick. Tape that right against that bottom edge there, and this tape just helps us get it as tight as we can as we wrap our wick around our center column. So just wrap as tight as you can get it. So trim it just a little bit so it'll be even. Just work that in. Is tighter the better, so this is going to work out just perfect. So we'll go ahead and squeeze that down in there. Okay, so just finish making sure your wick is mashed down in there as much as you can get it. If you had carbon felt, that would probably work out perfect in here. It's about the right the thickness. But once your wick is all the way in there, this is your completed stove. It's just a tiny hair over 2 inches tall and 1 3/8 inches in diameter there. So now that we've got our stove built, we're gonna have to go test it. Okay guys, we made it back inside. I actually did one burn test on this already to make sure it would work at all. But let's go ahead and measure it here, or let's weigh it. Turn on our scale. There we go. start. 23 grams. Make sure it measures it twice the same. 23 grams, and then we'll change it over to ounces. It's 3/4 of an ounce, or 23 grams. We'll set up our burn test here real quick, and we'll show you how the flame pattern is. Okay guys, we got our burn test set up here and ready. I've got a 1/2 fluid ounce of denatured alcohol we're going to use. So we'll pour that in the top. Put that over there. And then I've got 1 cup of room temperature water in my 600 milliliter Toaks titanium pot here. Let's go ahead and light this up. Here we are. And we'll start our timer and put our water on. Now one of the reasons I was trying to make a smaller stove is because I use this 600 milliliter pot, which is fairly small, and with most of my other stoves, like my beer can stoves, the jets, they shoot out the side here, and it doesn't have that much flame on the bottom. But with this stove, all of the flame is concentrated right on the bottom of the pot, and the flame comes out right to the edge. So it's, as far as the flame pattern, it's perfect for this Toaks 600 milliliter pot. You can hear it talking a little bit there, so it's about to boil. Not quite yet. There you go, it just came to a boil at 4 minutes and 10 seconds. So it's not the fastest stove in the world, but it definitely boils it up. Now we'll just see how long it takes to run out. The first time I did the boil test a minute ago, it boiled at 3 minutes and 40 seconds, so just a few seconds faster. But that could be due to several different things. Until as the alcohol starts to go down, the flame turns a real deep orange with just a little bit of blue in it. So we're probably into the last minute here. Okay, it's starting to flicker there a little bit. We're at 7 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll see what time it actually goes out here. And we're down to the last little flicker there, and that is going to be going out at 7:58, 59 there, and it's completely out. So it's not the fastest stove in the world, and it doesn't last forever, but that's pretty good on a 1/2 fluid ounce of alcohol. And it does boil. It did it pretty quick. Somewhere between 3.5 minutes and 4 minutes was my 2 different tests there. This time it was closer to that 4-minute mark. So let's take my water out there. And there she is. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If y'all like these kind of videos, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And we'll probably be back to you pretty soon with another video. It's getting that time of the year where we'll be able to get outside and do some more hiking. Thanks for watching, guys.